everybody. I'm Loren Culp, and welcome to this edition of Loren Live, Friday night. Thank you for joining us. And before I introduce my guest interviewer tonight, I'd like to talk a little bit about what our dear Governor Jay Inslee did today. I guess the good part of it is that he is allowing residential construction that's already underway to continue again. Apparently unable to make a decision on his own. He put together a 30-person, I believe it was 30 people, think tank, but they came up with a 30-point plan and rules that residential construction contractors and subcontractors all have to follow. Had a think tank going for weeks to try to figure out how to do it safely, which is a little bit of overkill. I think that Washingtonians, especially people that are running their own business, kind of have a little bit of common sense, and they can figure that out on their own. But our governor did that, so at least some people are able to get back to work and exercise their rights. So I guess that's the good part. So I'd like to introduce you guys to, a lot of you already know because we're live on multiple feeds, but Jason Humboldt from Washington State Fishing Facebook page. I believe you've got like 42 or 43,000 followers. Is that right, Jason?
Just hit 44,000 a day.
Excellent. So, awesome. And yes, you are my guest interviewer tonight. Could you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Jason Humboldt. I run a Washington State Fishing page. It's the largest Facebook fishing group in Washington State. I'm sharing everything through them today. Brought all of them to meet you and learn all about you and what you're about. We're gonna talk a lot about the fisheries and WDFW and the huge closure that everyone's upset about. But I wanted to first start off with who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself.
Okay, yeah, I'm Loren Culp, running for governor. For those of you that don't know. I've been a lifelong resident of Washington State, born and raised over by Port Townsend. Just outside of Port Townsend, there's a small town called Chimacum, for a little farming community. And I was raised over there on a little farm, went to grade school, junior high, and my freshman year of high school in Chimacum. And then my parents moved over to Republic, and I finished out high school over there. Met my high school sweetheart in Republic, and then we went on an adventure called the United States Army, and I spent 4 years in the Army in the 101st Airborne Division and the 2nd Infantry Division. I was a combat engineer. I also went to drill sergeant school at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Helped to turn civilians into soldiers for a while. That was very interesting. I liked that a lot. But after I got out of the military, went into construction. I worked for other people for a while, and then in 1988, I started my own construction business out of Olympia, and started that out from nothing. I bought a 1977 Datsun pickup truck from my grandpa. I used one on payments, and started that business that way. I was doing concrete foundations and driveways. I was framing houses, just living my American dream, running my own business. And I ran that business for just over 20 years. Built it up to multiple trucks, multiple employees, and we were doing jobs all over Puget Sound. And when I was little, my dad was a police officer. He was a deputy sheriff in Jefferson County. And I'd always thought that I wanted to be a cop, when I grew up. But life took me in a different direction for a while. But after running my construction business for over 20 years, a job opening came open with the Republic Police Department, where I went to high school, met my high school sweetheart. And so I decided at 49 years old that I was going to realize my childhood dream
and
go
late.
through the police academy. I got the job, went through the police academy at 49. Everybody called me Grandpa, but for good reason. But I've been the police officer now going on 11 years. I've been the chief of police here for 3.5 years, 4 years. Also a police canine handler, dual purpose dog. But that's kind of my story up until I decided to run for governor.
So with that, I've been in law enforcement for a little while. You made national news not too long ago. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Right. That was, unbeknownst to me, that was kind of the catalyst to get me on this road to running for governor. But in 2018, I was the chief of police, and Initiative 1639 passed, which is the anti-gun initiative that could make criminals out of otherwise law-abiding citizens. If someone steals your gun out of your house, goes commits a crime, you could be charged with up to a felony for that, right? And if you're 18 to 21, you couldn't buy a semi-automatic rifle, even a 1022 Plinker rifle. You just couldn't do it. And I knew that it was unconstitutional. You know, that Washington State's Constitution is even more explicit than this federal Constitution when it comes to the right to keep and bear arms and defend ourselves, you know. And so I knew it was unconstitutional. And the next day after it passed, I had citizens asking me, you know, what now? You're going to start arresting 18 to 21-year-olds you see walking around with a semi-automatic rifle? And, you know, in rural areas, it doesn't matter where you live, but especially in rural areas, you know, seeing teenagers with 22 rifles is very common. And my response to them was, no, I'm not going to do that. It's a violation of constitutional rights, and I'm not going to violate my oath of office, you know, that I took in the military and I took when I became a police officer. So I posted that on Facebook, said as long as I'm chief of police, no officer working under me will violate anyone's constitutional rights. And the next day, I wrote up a proposed ordinance for our city. And I emailed it to the city council. I emailed it to the mayor. And I said, I think that Republic should become a sanctuary for the Second Amendment, like the United States should be, as far as I'm concerned. And that just blew up. That went viral. That went everywhere. I was on the national news. Fox News sent a camera crew a camera crew and a reporter to the streets of Republic for 2 days. They were here. I ended up being on the Shannon Bream show on Fox, Fox and Friends, and I was on Tucker Carlson. And One American News Network also picked me up. I was on the Graham Ledger show there, but it just blew up, very unexpected. And I thought that, you know, most police chiefs and sheriffs across the state would come out and say the same thing, because Article 1, Section 24 is very clear of the Washington State Constitution. You know, the right of the individual citizen to bear arms in defense of himself or the state shall not be impaired. So there's no interpretation there. It will not be impaired. So I didn't understand at first why there weren't a lot of sheriffs and police chiefs coming out saying the same thing. And the only thing I could come up with is that we're most all a product of the public school system. And they don't teach the things that my parents taught me about our rights and about our Constitution and about what our founding fathers went through to get us those freedoms, and that we need to stand up for them. So I got the bright idea that I needed to write a book. I needed to get the information out of my head onto paper. And so I contacted a friend of mine who I knew was an author. And I said, how do I publish a book? I need to get this information out to the citizens and to the public servants that work for them. And she said that she just started a publishing company not very long before I called her, actually. I mean, this is a series of events that just happened,
quick, right? Yeah.
And so I said, well, I need to write this book. You know, I've been on the national news over this, and she'd seen me on Tucker Carlson, lives in Florida. But so the month of December, I wrote American Cop. Every waking hour I had, sometimes I stayed up all night just pounding away on the typewriter, I'm old school, on the laptop. And I wrote American Cop. I sent it to her, and she worked on the graphics, got pictures in there, got it in book form, corrected my grammar, you know, that type of thing, because I'm just a cop. And it was published on President's Day of 2019. That it went to #1 on Amazon in 3 different categories. Yeah. And it went to the #1 spot on the Hot 100 New Books list, and it stayed there for a few weeks, which surprised the heck out of me. But that got me invites to travel around the state to speak at sportsman shows and gun shows and Lincoln Day dinners with the Republican Party. And so I did that every day. I work 4 and I'm off 3, you know, and every weekend I was going somewhere in the state, mostly on the west side, speaking to groups about our rights and our responsibilities as well. And more people were reading my book and hearing me speak, and people started asking me to please run for governor. And at first I didn't take it serious, but as the summer, you know, wore on, there were more and more people coming to hear me speak, and more people asking me to run for governor. And that's why I decided to. You know, I talked to my wife, and
Give
we
it a
have
go.
seven grandkids that live in this state, 2 sons and 7 grandkids, and this state's going in the toilet. And so I looked around, and there wasn't anybody else that I could get behind 100%, you know, and that I knew would stand up and do what was right. You know, I was pretty much alone in 2018 at first, standing up for citizens' rights. And it's like, this is too important. You know, I'm 59 years old. If I don't take the bull by the horns right now, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. So that's how I got here.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what's going on right now. Let's dig down dirty into what a lot of my members in my group are upset about. And first of all, these questions come from a lot of my members hitting me up. I know there's a lot of issues in the state we could talk about other than the fisheries and the closures and stuff, but we're going to keep to Washington fisheries for this interview today. First off, people want to know, do you hunt and fish?
Absolutely. I've been a lifelong hunter and fisherman. My parents, like I said, I lived by Chimacum when I was young, and we'd take backpack trips, and we actually had a little burro named Don Poncho that we packed up, and we went up to the Olympic Mountains a lot, usually up the Elwha River. But we fished down in the Little Quilcene River, down by Quilcene, Washington, and the Elwha and CQ. Mostly what I've done is freshwater creeks, but we have been out fishing for salmon quite a bit too. And hunting, as soon as I was old enough to walk out in the woods, I was out hunting with my dad and my older brother. And I got my first deer when I was 8 and my first elk when I was 12. And I've been doing it ever since. I've raised my kids in the woods. So my brothers and my sons, we get together almost every year to hunt. I know they do, but sometimes I miss it, like this last year because I was busy campaigning.
Busy.
Yeah.
So being a hunter and fisherman, the closure right now, the state shut down fishing and hunting we're the only state in the entire country to shut it down. And a lot of people use that to get away from their problems of their lives, get a break from their jobs, their careers, to blow off stress. I had a turkey hunt scheduled on Sunday on private property, and I'm not able to go do that. And this is the first year I've ever bought a hunting license, so I was really excited about that hunt. What are your thoughts on this closure?
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Why shut down hunting and fishing? That's an activity that you can get out and be, one with nature, and by yourself or just a couple buddies. Why shut that down? That makes absolutely no sense. But we have a governor in there right now that hunting and fishing obviously is not a priority for him, but it is. I have 2 grandkids who just passed hunter safety not too long ago, and they're looking forward to going hunting. And I think it's stupid. It's just asinine. But, we've probably known for a long time that we have a governor right now that just doesn't have any common sense.
Right. And I'm sure he's not a huge avid hunter or fisherman, so he doesn't understand the importance of getting out in the water, being out in the woods is to a lot of people. So
absolutely, especially our veterans and first responders. It's you get out on a boat or you get out on the lake shore or river or get out in the woods. You just disconnect from everything. It's very relaxing. The stress goes away. A lot of our veterans and first responders both are, suffer from PTSD to certain degrees, and that relaxed time, that decompression, that's important.
Absolutely.
To not only them, but everybody, it's enjoyment to take the family out.
Absolutely. Next question here. Washington State has one of the largest operating budgets in the country. How do we direct more of the funds to the outdoor opportunities for tax-paying recreationalists? Well,
you get a governor in there that's going to advocate for that. Like I said, I'm a lifelong hunter and fisherman, and that's going to be a priority in my administration. It's not now, but it will be.
Okay.
I think that they, last I heard, that WDFW's budget was cut close to 50%. And that's devastating.
Oh, it kills a lot of opportunities in this state, both fishing and hunting.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about hatcheries and stuff like that, but it cuts down a lot of stuff. What are your thoughts on guaranteed outdoor recreational funding with a set annual budget increases to stop legislative influence and leave management to those looking out for the end user, for us?
My view on that is the same view that I've had ever since I started this campaign as far as government budgets go. The way that when I was in the Army, I worked for the federal government, right, for 4 years while I was a U.S. Army soldier. At the end of every fiscal year, the departments, they have a set amount for their budget. At the end of the fiscal year, if they have money left over, they go on a spending spree. Whether they need things or not, they spend that money because they don't want to lose it next year, plus the increase, right? And so that's how we've gotten to where we have a $54 billion state budget. $53 billion. That's
unbelievable.
Huge. Yeah. And what benefit did you get last week from that? Right?
Nothing.
It's huge. So the way that the budget is set up now, whatever you had for last fiscal year, they increase it by a certain percentage, and then that's what you get next year. And that's why the state budget is just ballooned over the years. So what I'm going to push for is a zero-based budget where each department has to justify what they need the money for, what it's going to be spent on, and set the budget based on that. Not on whatever they spent last year, because there's a ton of waste in that. So
and it holds them accountable.
Yes, exactly. And that's my ideas on budgets for any department. It cuts waste. It puts more money in the taxpayer's pocket where it needs to be.
Yeah, and it goes to the things that are important that people can look forward to, and it goes to things that I don't know how to put that, but.
Well, I've heard from some state employees, there are, just like I said, they'll spend money at the end of the fiscal year. There are pallets full of computers sitting in some departments right now. They didn't need them, but they needed to spend the money. Yeah. And so that's what they did. And it's just a waste. That's money. If we can cut that budget down just by cutting that waste, think about how much more money we can direct to things like the Department of Wildlife so that we can get our fishing and hunting back up to where it used to be.
And talking about that, let's talk about the economy a little bit. Do you understand the economic impact to Washington State when fishing and hunting opportunities exist?
Absolutely, I do. I went out to Westport, it's been a couple months ago, and talked to the folks out there. My grandparents, my grandpa on my mom's side was a commercial fisherman. My grandpa on my dad's side was a sport fisherman. And in fact, he lived right next to us where we lived, just outside of Port Towns. I used to go fishing with him all the time. And my grandparents that were commercial fishermen were up in Anacortes area, so I've been out in San Juan's a lot. But I definitely know the impact, But I was out at Westport and talked to the folks out there, did a meet and greet out there a couple months ago. And there used to be 300 charter boats that worked out of Westport 10, 15 years ago. Now there's 28. So we've gone from 300 to 28. And every boat had a captain and a crew, all the support people on shore, all the hotels, the rental cars, airlines, because this state used to be a destination state for people all around the world, let alone all around the United States.
Yes, sir.
And so you lose out on airlines, fuel, rental cars, equipment, hotels, gas, food, and the charter. And those are family wage jobs. Those are businesses that have disappeared, and all of the support companies, industries around that. So you go from 300 to 28 charter boats just out of Westport. Think about all the other ports around the state that have had the same thing or worse happen. It's a huge economic impact.
And absolutely, during this closure, I have a lot of good friends that are guides and charters, and they're sitting there watching their business kind of just dwindle down because they can't do anything. They're literally stuck. And
it makes absolutely no sense.
That's the point we're getting at, Loren, for sure. And we're hoping that gets fixed here sometime soon. So my next question has to do with working as one. It's kind of something that I've been pushing on my page for the last couple months, but I had a rally scheduled at the Capitol about this on April 3rd, but because of the virus and the closure and everything shut down, I decided to reschedule that because I was probably going to have close to 1,000 people there, and we wanted to kind of keep people a little bit further away apart. But do you think it's important for tribal, commercial, sportsmen all to work together as one versus how it's been for so long, people blaming each user group? Do we need to work together to get to one common goal, which would be more fish for everybody?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all have the same desire, which is more fish, right? There's no reason why we can't work together. And we need to, because our fisheries are in dire straits. They're in trouble, and because they've been neglected for so long. So with all the people that are involved working together, we can increase the fishing in this state and get it back to the way it was when I was a kid.
Absolutely. Yeah, we need to build those relationships between the user groups and come together. I think that's huge and very important right now.
Yep, I agree.
Let's talk about a really interesting topic that's going around a lot of the fisheries, and something that I think needs more light brought to it, which would be the pinnipeds and the bird-eating smolt and how they're devastating our fisheries. I mean, I go down to Buoy 10 in Astoria every single year, and there's a lot of boats down there. There's fish, but you start fighting a fish and you're reeling that sucker in as fast as you can, because, I mean, you'll be out there in a day and you'll see 20, 30 people fighting sea lions, following them in their boat, trying to keep them under so they can release their fish and get it back. Half the time you end up with half a fish. So what are your thoughts on harvesting pinnipeds and dealing with the bird issue?
Well, if you've got a problem with populations of fish, then you can't ignore the predators. You know, they need to be thinned out just like everything else, just like weeds out of the garden, just like coyotes that are eating fawns. They all need to be controlled. And that includes seals, sea lions, and predatory birds.
Absolutely. So I have a buddy that hunts birds and hunts ducks, and he cut open a bird this last season that had, I think he said, like 8 to 10 smolt in its belly. And I'm just thinking,
yeah,
I don't think a lot of people know how big of an impact that has. You times that by 1 million birds. I mean, they're sitting on these rivers watching these smolt come out, and they're just devastating these populations. So I think It's a huge issue. I think
and you go to a lot of the dams, and there's seals and sea lions everywhere, you know, and they are eating a lot of salmon. So we need to manage the wildlife in the state, and that includes predators.
Yeah, and I think we were talking before the interview with Bill there. We were talking about a river down, I believe it was in Oregon, but they ended up started harvesting, and their fish populations grew immensely. I don't recall what river it was, but
if I'm not mistaken, it was a Willamette.
I think it was, and
maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a news report on it, which is very good. They were controlling the predators, and the salmon numbers are coming back up. It's just common sense.
Yeah, common sense is your thing, Loren, for sure. I like it. You did an interview last night on Fish Hunt Northwest with Dwayne, talking about something that, and like I told you before the interview here, you kind of changed my mind and thoughts on this, and I'm hoping people see it this way as well. But talk about making hunting and fishing a constitutional right in Washington, and would it help prevent further prohibitions like this happening? A lot of people are obviously upset.
Right. Yeah, and I told Dwayne the same thing, that I'm going to look into see what other states have done. But I mean, the idea sounds great on the surface, but then you think about it, it's like, well, you know, I have a First Amendment right, a constitutional right to free speech, or to freely assemble, or to exercise my religion how I see fit, right? I don't have to buy a permit. I don't have to buy a license. I don't have to pay for a tag, or follow the regulations on freely speaking, right?
Right.
And so the thing that bothers me about, the thing that I'm concerned about is if hunting and fishing is constitutional right, then I'm not going to want to pay a fee to exercise my constitutional right. So where do we go with management too? Because, well, it's my constitutional right to hunt and fish. So how can the state limit that and tell me, well, you know, you can only get this many fish, and you can only get 1 deer or 2 deer or whatever? I mean, how do we cross that bridge? That's my concern. Yeah.
Do we pay permit fees for a constitutional right? You got me last night when I was listening to that. I'm like, oh, well, that was well said, because it makes sense.
It's a dangerous road to go down, because if we do that and then we're paying fees, you know, for licenses and tags to exercise that right, then some really far left radical gets into office 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road, and they say, well, you're paying these fees, jumping all through all these hoops. We have all these regulations for you exercising this constitutional right. We're going to do the same thing for your Second Amendment rights and your First Amendment rights. That's the danger.
Open up a can of worms for our constitutional rights, which we do not want to do. How would you return the great state of Washington to be a premier destination for outdoor activities like hunting and fishing? Many of our outdoorsmen leave the state and hunt and fish looking for opportunities that do not exist anymore in Washington. Kind of like we talked about being a staple destination where people used to come to fight the biggest steelhead and load up on limits of fish, but people are now going to Montana to hunt, Idaho to hunt, going to different places to fish, like down in Oregon. I mean, how are we getting this state back to a staple destination?
The governor does not appoint the head of the Department of Fish and Wildlife, but the governor appoints the Fish and Wildlife Council. And I will ensure that the people that I appoint to the Fish and Wildlife Council are real hunters, real fishermen or women, and they actually have the experience of doing that, and they are avid fishers and hunters. If they're not, then I'm not going to appoint them, because that's very important, because they direct what the Fish and Wildlife Department does.
Yeah, I think you need people in there that understand what it's like to be in a boat fighting fish or trolling for salmon or stalking animals in the forest. I think that's huge, and you need the right people in our management position. So
yeah, exactly. And we don't want people leaving the state to go hunt and fish someplace
taking
else.
Their money.
We want people here at home. They can enjoy that outdoor recreation right here. That's my vision for this state.
Yeah, and then it brings a ton more money into our economy and to our small business owners that are guides and charters. And I mean, it would just fix a lot of economical issues too. So.
Absolutely.
All right, let's dig into hatcheries, Loren. What are your views? What are your views on hatchery production? Do you feel that our hatcheries are a critical part of salmon and the recovery? Absolutely,
I do. We need to have our hatcheries putting out 100%, 110% if it's possible. I mean, they need to be producing salmon, and if we need more hatcheries, we need to get them built. How else are you going to restock the depleted salmon populations?
Resource,
right?
Yeah.
We're going to get rid of the predators, and we're going to start pumping salmon out of the hatcheries.
So on top of that, I'm going to read you a little snip here. Ron Gardner helped me put together because he's really good at this number stuff. There has been severe cuts to our Washington State salmon hatchery production. Endangered species, funding cuts, and hatchery science review groups have all resulted in less fish. In 1992, Washington State coho and Chinook hatchery production was 335.8 million. In 2016, it was 175.8 million. That's a cut of 160 million hatchery fish out of the system per year. Would you endorse raising hatchery production rates back up to allowable safe rate under ESA, which we kind of talked about? I mean, that number to me was shocking.
It's a no-brainer if you care about our fish and wildlife, to pay attention to the numbers like that. If you're not producing and you're leaving the predators run rampant, then it's a no-brainer why we don't have the runs that we used to have. So we need to increase the production of our hatcheries. We need to get rid of most of those predators so that we don't have this situation. There's no reason why the commercial and sport and the tribes need to fight about who gets how many salmon. There should be enough salmon to go around everywhere and everybody be happy. And we all work towards the same thing. It can be done. It just takes somebody in office that has that as a priority, and that will be my priority. I guarantee it.
Yeah, we need to push our focus back on to the tons of people that are spending all this money on our economy and opening up more opportunities. So, and
not only the opportunities for families to get out there and enjoy themselves. When my kids were growing up, that's what we did all the time. We
were fishing,
outdoor family. There's nothing greater than getting kids out of the house, away from the video games, and out in the woods or on the water.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. My daughter is 7 now. She was 3 years old on the Westport Charter slammer boat out there fishing with us. I mean, she's been on the water since she was 3, and she absolutely loves it. She's kind of a Washington State fishing staple now, where she's just fishing all the time with me all over. So
That's
we
the way
definitely
it should
need to.
be.
Absolutely. That's it for my fishing questions. I kind of wanted to touch base on your 3 tests for the people that don't know you
Okay.
in my fishing group, and kind of if you could explain that to me real quick, that'd be great.
Yeah, as far as when I'm governor and legislature brings a bill to my desk to be signed into law, I have 3 tests that bill will have to pass in order for me to sign it. And number 1, is it constitutional? Because the Constitution is the rule book for our government, right? It's not a rule book that says what we are supposed to do. It's the rule book for our government. And if they're trying to do something that isn't in that rule book, then I will veto it. Number 2, is it good for the citizens of Washington State? Like I said, I've been a lifelong resident other than 4 years in the military. If they're passing things that are good for special interests, good for somebody else, good for their own pocketbook, but not good for the citizens, that's the main priority. I will veto it. And number 3, can we do it without any new taxes? And I'm huge on regulations and taxes getting lowered in this state. So if it doesn't pass any of those 3, I will veto it.
That sounds amazing. Bill, I know you're listening here. Are we doing a Q&A at all? Are we jumping out here? No? Okay. I think I got my questions answered for this interview, Loren. I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
Absolutely, Jason. And I can't see a screen that has any questions on it. So I guess I'll just hit the Facebook page and start answering those on the Facebook page. So if anybody's got any questions, type them in on this live feed, and we'll try to get answers for you.
Cool, and I appreciate all the Wash State Fishing that watched this and got to know Loren Culp a little bit better. We'll probably do another interview here before the big days. And
if anybody wants to go to my website and check out, everybody knows the problems in this state. If everybody wants to go there and see, I've got them listed, but I've also got my solutions listed as well. So if anybody wants to look into that even more or donate to our campaign, we need donations. We're going up against a huge liberal machine with Jay Inslee. Our campaign website is culpforgovernor.com. And then we're also on Facebook at Culp for Governor. I would appreciate any help anybody can give us, especially sharing our content all over the place. Let people know who I am. I kind of came out of the woodwork a couple of years ago, 2018. But we have a statewide volunteer campaign going on. Every corner of the state is covered, and we have over double the individual donations coming into my campaign than any other on the Republican side. So it's really going good. This campaign definitely has legs. So any help we can get, we appreciate it. And don't forget, a lot of outdoorsmen, a lot of fishermen, a lot of hunters, they don't want to get involved in politics, right? I'm not involved in politics. I just want to go fishing, right? Or I want to go hunting. But it all comes down to politics. If we don't have the right people in office, then we don't have salmon, or we have stupid rules and stupid regulations. So it is all about politics, and everybody needs to make sure that they're registered to vote, make sure their friends are registered to vote, and then make sure we cast our ballot. The primary is August 4th. So it's coming up in 3 months. That's what I would ask everybody to take a look at.
And it's funny you say the politics thing. For so long, I've been anti-politics on my page because it's kind of just fishing, hunting. I want to keep it like that. But how can you say that fishing and hunting have nothing to do with politics when we're sitting here with a closure from a government? Politics
from a politician.
That's what I'm saying. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So like Loren said here, if you guys can jump on Loren Culp for Governor Facebook group, like and share his group, you'll get notifications when he comes live on the next time. And I appreciate everybody for watching this with us. So
absolutely,
thank you,
Jason,
Loren.
and thank you for being my guest host. I appreciate it.
No problem, buddy. All right, man.
All right. God bless Washington State. God bless America. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow night. No, wait a minute. Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow night at 6:30.
Thanks.
Take care.